Welcome to Austin Eras, where we explore Austin's transformation into a 21st century boomtown and the voices shaping its past, present, and future.
Hi, I'm Adam Flagg. I'm the host of Austin Eras podcast, and I'm so excited to have our guest today. His name is José Velásquez. He is a District 3 council member for the city of Austin. He's an elected official. He's got a lot of really interesting background. He's a fourth-generation Austinite. He's a community activist and represents District 3, which is a pretty large district and a very important part of Austin that's seen a lot of change over the last few years. He was raised in East Austin by a single mother who worked multiple jobs, and he began working at age 11 at a local panaderia. That same year, he launched his first act of civic leadership, a petition that resulted in the removal of an abusive school bus monitor. He attended Metz, Martin, and Austin High before graduating from Houston-Tillotson University. He served on numerous boards and commissions, including the East Austin Conservancy, Latinitas Austin, and the Greater Austin Chamber of Commerce, and the Mayor's Anti-Displacement Task Force. He also founded a nonprofit in memory of his brother, focused on voter registration and community support. He was elected in 2022, and he centers his platform on affordability, accessibility, and action. He's a leading voice on housing reform, constituent access, and cultural preservation, redefining what representation looks like and can look like here in Austin today. Welcome to the show, Jose.
Excited to be here, brother. Thank you for having me.
Really excited to have you. I got to see you speak a few years ago for the Austin Sunshine Camps.
Yes. Well, I'm sorry and thank you at the same time.
No, absolutely fantastic to be able to watch and hear from an elected official that has been through something that's near and dear to my heart through the Sunshine Camps. We've had Erica Blue as a guest.
One of my favorite people.
She's amazing.
Favorite people.
Absolutely amazing. As the executive director of the Sunshine Camps, you've spoken because you actually went through that camp system. This wasn't going to be my first question, but it's the first place I've gone in my head is this camp is really meant to bring kids into a situation where they're under the poverty line. They're able to come in, get to have a real camp experience where they're never going to have a camp experience otherwise. And you were one of those children.
Absolutely, man. So I always forget the age. I think I was about 8 or 10 in between those ages when I went there. And that was like the move when I was coming up. I went to Metz Elementary and everybody wanted to go to Sunshine Camp because the kids would come back from the following year and just talk about the amazing things that they experienced. And when I was talking about it at Sunshine Camp, when I was giving that speech, in fact the next one's coming up I believe on Wednesday, their next fundraiser, I was talking about how I'd never seen a canoe before. I could probably count at that point on one hand how many times I'd gone west of 35, and like when I was growing up we used to call it the Great Wall of Austin because so few things so few of us went that way and so few resources came over. But I absolutely loved it. It was one of the definitely top 5 most like impactful experiences of my life, and just exposure to things that we hadn't been exposed to. I mean, I know that I'd been to Barton Springs at least one other time, but we went swimming every single day when we were over there, like in Barton Springs, and it was just something different. And knowing that while the unifying theme there was poverty, because every one of those kids grew up poor, we didn't all look the same, and we came from every different part of Austin, which was amazing. And having grown up in East Austin and being very proud to have grown up in East Austin, I had the assumption, of all the extensive 8 years of my life that we were the only poor kids in the city. And so it was good to know that there were kids from all walks of life that were experiencing the same trauma.
Yeah, so you go to that, you get that experience, it's life-changing for you, and then you keep kind of proceeding through your childhood. You start early, in my sense. Some kids, it takes a while to kind of figure out where they want to go, what they want to do, but you're out there working in East Austin with your single mother at a panaderia at that age. Tell me about what that was like. What do you remember most vividly from your first job? So
my first job, it actually came about, my mom had this phenomenal friend named Rudy Castañon. And Rudy used to own what is called El Porvenir in East Austin on Santa Rita Street. He was a dear friend of my mother's. My mom, we would go there. Rudy was a neighborhood guy that allowed you to get stuff on credit until you got paid.
Okay.
So we could get bread, we could get milk, we could get sweet bread, obviously. And one day I was in there and he I was talking to him, and he didn't have any boys, and he was always telling my mom, let me adopt him, jokingly, let me adopt him. And my mom was like, I'm not letting you take my child. But Rudy was just a phenomenal, brilliant, and amazing man, and just a super big heart. And one day I was talking to him he was talking to me about money and trying to explain different economics to me, at the 11-year-old level that I was at, and he said, well, would you want to make your own money, and help your mama out? And I said, absolutely. Well, how could I do that? Like, I can't work till I'm 15, though. He was like, you want to come work? You can come work here. And so he opened up the door to do that at the time. And I can't remember distinctly if we'd already started, but I was still going to Metz Elementary, but we were getting bused to Webb Middle School because they were rebuilding Metz Elementary in East Austin at the time. So I'd have to get there. When I did work during the week, have to get there about 5 o'clock. So the schedule's still stuck. I get up at 4 or 4:30 every day now. And since then, go and help the baker set up stations, and then take off from there, run to catch the bus to go to elementary school. And then I would do it on the weekends, either before or after church.
Wow. So you were fitting this in a big schedule. It sounds like you had a full schedule. Did you go to bed early then if you're getting up at 4 a.m.?
I don't remember what time I would go to bed. Maybe like 8 or 9, which is about the time that I go to bed now,
okay.
Like 8 or 9, because I like to at least get a good 7 hours.
Good. Okay. So it sounds like this really built a lot of work ethic and change in you. And then at that same time, you went through something on a school bus and started a petition. Tell us about what that was like, because that's your first real civic engagement.
Yeah, and my mom likes telling that story, and it's crazy because I think I'd forgotten about it for a while until I started running for office, and my mom was talking to somebody about me running, and she was like, "Oh, he's been of service since he was a little kid," and she tells this story. I was like, I had forgotten all about that, but I was on the school bus. We had parent monitors at the time because everybody was a volunteer, right? In AISD, this is when we were getting bused to Webb.
Yeah.
And so there was this monitor, one of the parent monitors, and my friend I had a friend on the bus that had said something inappropriate to her, but her response, instead of just correcting the action, was to physically assault this child. I didn't like that, and I didn't know what you could do, and she was also, it was also a woman, so it was, that there were codes in our house, and you don't put your hands on women, period. And so it wasn't going to get violent, but I was I wanted to do something, and I went home. I remember I was upset, and I was explaining this to my mom, and my mom was like, "Well, you should get a petition together." And I was like, "To do what? Like, nobody's gonna listen to us. Like, we're little kids. Like, nobody's gonna listen to us." And so my mom helped me put a petition together. The next day, I was out there with my little clipboard and my pen and my petition, and getting all the kids to sign it and getting their parents to sign it. And she got kicked off the bus. And so it was a win for literally for the little guy. And the only unfortunate part is that the lady lived from the bus stop to in between the bus stop and my house, so I got to see her every single day after that. And she didn't mind letting me know that she did not agree with me getting her kicked off the bus.
Okay, all right, that's gutsy, because you knew there was going to be some implications, and that leads to courage and leadership.
My mom always told me never be afraid to do the right thing. Yeah. And so that's really where that comes from, and that feeds a lot of how I conduct myself now.
Well, tell me about this time period in this early time, age 11 into your teenage years. Were there teachers, were there neighbors, were there people, the mentors in the community that saw your leadership potential? When did you start to see it, and when did they see it?
I grew up without a dad. My dad left when I was 4 years old, and I tell folks, when that happens to you, when you grow up in that trauma, as a male, you start collecting father figures, and so I had a great array of people that my mom put me around, because I didn't know it at the time. I didn't know why that was. That I always just seemed to have some really phenomenal human beings, phenomenal men around me. One of them is my cousin Gilbert Velásquez, may he rest in peace. He was actually a Velásquez that ran for office before I ran for office. Really? And in my office, I actually have his bumper sticker from his county commissioner campaign framed above my sticker for city council. And I told folks right when I started running for office, I was like, we came back for it, man. We came back for it. But him, Senator Gonzalo Barrientos, that has been a friend of my mother's since the beginning of time. My Tío Lance and my Tío Lance and my Tío Chilo and my Tío Frank were just phenomenal, and of course my grandfather, just phenomenal, beautiful men with big hearts, and I think that's what my mom was trying to instill in me. Like, you can be because the Velásquez were known for being a little gruff sometimes, but also nobody ever questions our heart or our commitment to the community or commitment to family. And I really think that that's the trajectory my mom wanted to put me on, because my dad was very much none of those things.
Yeah, sounds like your mom was very involved in your life.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Well, my mom was working 2 or 3 jobs, and I tell folks, because I am a voracious reader now, and one of those reasons is that, like, I would wait for my mom to get home to read to me. My mom, again, working 2 or 3 jobs, she'd get home like at 11, and I'm sure the last thing she wanted to do was sit down with her kid for 30 minutes to read a book. But that was my way, is like working through some of that trauma, is like knowing that she would be home, right? She had to come home and read me my book, that she wasn't going to go away like my dad was when I was a kid. So my mom would get home, we'd read a book, and now I read pretty much anything I can pick up, and so I love the written word, and I actually get a couple compliments on it, and suggest books all the time to people. And in fact, that's one of my love languages, man, is giving away books to people.
Well, I'll dig on that right now. What are 2 top books that you've been reading or that you've seen in the last year?
Oh man, anything by Ryan Holiday. Ryan Holiday's a local author. He writes I started studying the Stoics about 10 years ago. Yeah. And bringing a level of pragmatism to things, but anything by Ryan Holiday. In fact, there's a new one coming out, not to give him a plug, I'm not getting paid for this, but he's got a new one coming out, I believe, on October 21st, and I already have that one on pre-order, so I'm waiting for it.
He does the Daily Stoic podcast.
The Daily Stoic podcast, yeah, man, listen to it every day.
I think he owns a bookstore in Bastrop.
He owns a bookstore in Bastrop, The Painted Porch.
Yeah, okay, so I need to go check this guy out.
Oh my God, man, and he is a friend of a friend, and I've been trying to set up a coffee, but not like, oh, the council member wants to meet you. No, just Jose wants to meet you, man, because he's had such a profound impact on my life. In fact, his book, Ego is the Enemy, I've given out to every single council member on the dais. Like when we came back in for after summer break, we take a break usually in June, and not a break, but like we have no council meetings for June. And I bought every single person on the dais a copy of this book, because it was a book that I read that I absolutely didn't realize how much of a gift it was, that I read before I ran for office. And it talks about how we disabuse how many times we are operating out of space that's just ego, and it is a response to things. I mean a reaction to things as opposed to a response to things. And so I bought it from my colleagues. Some folks thought it was a snarky gift, but it wasn't. It seriously was just none of my colleagues. Some of my colleagues in my office thought it might have been a snarky way for me to give a gift, but it was really just I found so much value in it, and I wanted to share it with folks. So yeah, man, anything by Ryan Holiday.
All right, Ryan Holiday, if you're watching, if you're listening, let's connect you with Jose.
Absolutely, or anything by Robert Greene, man. And I love Robert Greene, one of my favorite books. And in fact, I gave this to some folks from Central Health. We went on a retreat to Denver to go and see how the homeless strategy office does work over there. And we were sitting at a table, and I was talking to them about Robert Greene, but I was actually talking to him. He wrote this book called The 48 Laws of Power. And he wrote one with 50 Cent, with Curtis Jackson. And I was telling them, I was making it, this guy was like, I was like, have you read the 50th law? Because we were talking about the 48 laws. He was like, no. And I was like, well, man, you got shortchanged 2 laws, man. I was like, you need to go get a refund on those 2 laws. I said, but for me, the 48 Laws of Power can be a highly effective tool for anybody that wants to learn strategy or learn more how to operate with people and within leadership. But the 50th Law of Power to me was more relevant because 50 Cent grew up in the street. He grew up in a tough neighborhood. He grew up in tough environments. And so that one was a lot more relatable for me. And I was telling them about that. I think they thought I was joking, because they're like, surely this elected official is not telling us that the Curtis Jackson 50 Cent one is better. Well, I bought them each a copy of it, and when we got back, I gave it to them as gifts, and they were like, just blown away by this book. So yeah, anything by Robert Greene, the 50th Law of Power is probably my favorite one, and then anything by Ryan Holiday.
Well, let me talk about this, because I think we know you ended up at Community College Houston-Tillotson. You kind of go through this process, but you said you grew up in a tougher area at times. Tell me a little bit about what your teenage years were like. You're going through this process of probably some kids are doing certain things, and how do you stay on the straight and narrow during that time?
Oh man, well when I was growing up, I was doing certain things.
Okay.
I was not. So my mom, when she tells people, she said, I made him with big shoulders and a big heart. So he would have the big shoulders to get himself into trouble, and he had the big heart. He could always come back and center himself.
Yeah.
And he was always like, in growing up around the folks that I grew up around, the experience for me was just, it was community. You know, I was listening to this podcast the other day where folks were talking about, you know, the number one assumption about gangs or people that are affiliated with gangs or any of that environment is that, you know, 99% of these guys are out doing crimes 99% of the time, and that's not anywhere near the case. And I'm not making a plug for gang members or being in gangs, but growing up around folks that are, it was more of a sense of belonging and community, and how you can band together to just be proud of where you come from, and just a shared lived experience or a shared trauma, or you know, I actually reconnected with a friend that I hadn't spoken with in not a very long time. We just hadn't really connected in a while. And the other day, and it reminded me, I was with a friend, and he was with his partner, and they asked about. I said, you know, I hadn't talked to this person in years. I hadn't talked to him in a few years, and it instantly came back. Just the camaraderie of that. The man, I miss actually just having conversations with you, because this was a guy that never really had a chance, man. He was one of the most brilliant people I'd ever met in my life, but didn't have what I had. And the blessing that I had was my mom. My mom that was like, one way that people knew how they can straighten me out was like, you're going to embarrass your mom if you do that. Or, you know, your mom's working 3 jobs and you're out here doing this crap. And so that was always my North Star. It's like, you know, I have to, at the minimum, if I can end up being a quarter of the human being my mom is by the time, you know, I'm judged at the pearly gates, I'll live the good life.
That's really touching. That's amazing what the impact your mom has had. And I know your family suffered a tragedy in 2009. And I mean, I read a little bit about this, but I'm not sure how much is actually you've ever said publicly. But I mean, can you share how that moment of losing your brother in 2009 really changed the way you see the world and how you see yourself today? You know,
it was, you know, one of the, like, you know, I said earlier about Sunshine Camp, it was one of the 5 most impactful experiences of my life. That was definitely one of them, if not the top one. But yeah, my brother was murdered in front of my mother's house. A gentleman drove up. They'd had a disagreement, and a gentleman drove up. My brother thought it was a friend that was driving up. The gentleman rolled down the window, fired off shots, hitting my little brother, hitting another gentleman. And this is literally, I mean, like, when I say in front of my mother's house, literally on the sidewalk in front of my mom's house. And I remember the experience of going to the hospital after that and just watching folks, again, this community that I referenced a little while ago, of folks that were just looking for a way to, like, release anger and release frustration and release this pain that they were dealing with. And I think, like, instantly I must have matured probably about 20 years in that time, man, because the last thing that I wanted is any other harm to come out of that. The last thing that I wanted was anybody else to experience what we were experiencing. And really, you know, it reminds me of my best friend at the time told me, he was like, you know, I think that is the most adult I've ever seen you. He said, because you go out to this room of people that are, like, you know, seriously just chomping at the bit to do something not, you know, positive, and want to be able to release that frustration that they have. And the one thing that you told him is that, you know, my mom wouldn't want this, and Pancho wouldn't want this. This is my little brother. Pancho wouldn't want this. He wouldn't want y'all getting into trouble, and we don't. This ends here. Like this little cycle or this little disagreement ends here. And so, really, man, and you know, and I tell folks this all the time. It's like, if you can imagine what it's like, being just completely crushed, and then being asked to lead, like, or being it almost being demanded of you that you lead in an instant when you're just completely broken, and you know, just. I really just fell back because I was like, if my mom can be here and we just walked in and they presented my brother's body to us and my mom didn't just die, didn't just fall over and give up, then I can walk into this other room and just tell this group of guys and boys, calm down. This energy ends here. And so, you know, I talk about that a lot because I always, you know, even like, it's just like when I talk about mental health, it's like, I always want people to feel comfortable to reciprocate that. I always want them to feel comfortable to say, like, man, I've been in that spot before. Or, man, I didn't think about that the way that you did. And, you know, it was a tough spot to be in, because if you were harboring rage and you were harboring anger and you were harboring frustration and you have a very easy release, But your better angels call on you, man, and your faith calls on you, and your mother and calls on you, and so it's really just once again, man, my mom flexing her spiritual muscle and keeping us all safe.
Yeah, your mom is someone to very much be proud of. It sounds like the impact that
I tell people, I was like, my mom shrunk a little bit, but I remember my mom being like 8 feet tall for some reason. And, I tell people there are like maybe 3 women that can like just absolutely terrify me. One of them is my mother. The other is the District 3 Chief of Staff. But, that level of, and not terror in the sense that like where people are like, oh my God, just like whimsically kind of scared. Like, no, like I don't want them to be upset at me because I can instantly become a 3-year-old.
So I think you go through a lot of things throughout your kind of, I guess I'll say, your adolescent years, and you get to be, college age, and you're out in the community, and you don't necessarily run a traditional style career like, hey, I went off and did this and did that. You immediately are in your community.
Absolutely.
Tell me about what it's like to be a community activist in your 20s.
I had some great mentors, and I tell folks that if I'm not moving within community or for community, I'm not moving. And like, I have this tattoo on my arm that says service over self. And that's really the way that I live my life. My mom, all of it stemmed from Yolanda. I told this story the other day. When I was a kid, my mom had come home after one of her jobs, and it was one of the years where we had like, we'd had a rough year the year before around Christmas, and Christmas is my all-time favorite holiday. We actually gotten some gifts. We actually had a tree. We had some lights up. It was like, I thought we were on coast, man. I thought we were headed for a good Christmas. And my mom comes home and she says, grab those toys, or grab those wrap. I say toys because that makes the story more traumatic for me, right? I never really knew what was in these packages, but I assume they were toys. So she says, grab those toys and grab a couple of your shirts. And I'm like, how many of my 4 shirts do you want me to grab? Like, what do you mean grab some of your shirts? All I have is some. And so, grab some of your shirts, grab those toys, and let's go. And I was like, okay. So, I grabbed I grabbed 2 of my shirts, and then I grab the toys, and we go, and I'm just sitting there, and I'm like, in those times I didn't really ever have the energy or the courage to ever question anything my mom said. This was a long time ago, but my mom still terrifies me like that to this day. But we pull up to this house off East 6th Street, and my mom hops off. She said, wait here. She goes upstairs, and the whole time I'm just curious, like, where the hell are my toys going? Like, I think I was like 6 or 7, and I'm like, where the hell are my toys going? Yolanda runs upstairs. She comes back down, and she reaches in the back. She has this case of like food, and then she's like, grab those toys in your t-shirts. I said, okay. We go upstairs, and we walk into this living room. This lady, there are no lights on. It's freezing in there. I believe they have like a small space heater, or gas space heater. Back in those days, they still had those. And very obviously a lot worse off than we were. And so like we're leaving, right? And I'm in the car, and finally, I think it was like the first time ever in my life I'd ever questioned anything my mom was doing. And I said, why did we do that? What did we just do? Like, we didn't have toys last year. Like, we didn't have any of this. And she was like, you don't understand this right now. You're not going to. She was like, but I promise you'll get your toys back. I promise you at some point, the Lord will find a way to fill your heart with that space that's empty right now. She said, did you see the lights weren't on in that space? And I was like, yeah. She's like, our house is lit up. We have Christmas lights up. She was like, did you see any food around there? Did you see anybody? She was that lady hasn't eaten in 3 days so she could feed her kids. She said, us on the way home, we can get shortstop if we want to. And she was like, you had 4 shirts. That little kid, he was like, that's the one that he has. And I was like, and just blown away. And like, again, still didn't really understand it, right? Like, you're 8 years old or around that age, and it's like, you don't understand why you just gave half of your crap away. I'm like, I barely have any. And she's like, we have a lot more than most. And it's always true. That's the way that I measure things. It's like, I have a lot more than most. It can always be worse. There are always worse situations to fall into. And even when you're down there, there's always a lower level to get to, man. And So for the longest answer to a question is that my activism is born out of that, and it's out of that. Like I tell folks, like if you've never been hungry, it's hard to understand poverty. Like when I was growing up, folks would talk about how poor they were, and even now at City Hall, folks talk about poverty sometimes, and I'm like, what does that mean to you? Because it is relative. Because I had friends when I was growing up, and they didn't grow up in Eastside, that were at Austin High, and they would talk about poverty, and they lived out in Oak Hill, and I was like, okay, I'm not judging anybody. I'm sure there's some poor folks out in Oak Hill, but what does that mean to you? And it's like, oh, well, I didn't have an allowance growing up, or like they would cut my allowance growing up, and I'm like, okay, that's very different than what I understand poverty to be. Or like we didn't get to go on holiday this year, and it's like, okay, still very, very different from like 19 people piling into a station wagon and going to Mexico. Like this is very different circumstances. And then, I would tell folks like, well, how have you ever had it to where like you didn't have central air in the summer and you had to open the windows and you had one box fan for the entire family? Like, or have you ever had it to where you ate ramen noodles for 4 days straight because that's all you had? Like that's all you had to eat. Or I went to work when I was 11, and I'm not saying that's a bad thing or a mark of poverty at all. I love the fact that I went to work at 11 years old. But did you have to do that? Have you ever had to do these things? And I think that's really, what I bring to City Hall is the lived experience of being hungry, knowing what hunger feels like, and knowing that I don't ever want anybody to feel like that, man. Like my charge isn't to. I don't need the show. I want the hustle. I want the work. And so I had a mentor that told me one time, is like, don't ever worry about the show. The show comes if you get the hustle right. And the hustle is what I work for every day.
So tell me a little bit about what you were doing prior to deciding to run for city council.
So prior to running for city council, I had started a small firm. My background's in PR and marketing. And I started that small firm just so I could run for office. Literally before that, I led the marketing team at Austin ISD.
Oh, nice. Okay.
And I absolutely loved that job. No shade to AISD, but I wasn't getting paid anything. But I absolutely loved it. My task was to boost enrollment in under-enrolled schools, to help out schools that had never had any of these resources. So they were all the schools that I went to when I was growing up. And being a product of AISD, it was every day when I was at work, I saw the little Joses of the world in those hallways. So I was paid 10 times over in gold just by virtue of helping those kids out.
So when was the moment during your career path where you went, I think I want to run for city council?
I'd been asked before, man, and that's not like vanity. I remember giving a speech one time, and one of my mentors came and was like, have you ever thought about running for public office? And I was like, nope. It just wasn't. It wasn't a passion of mine. And then one of my great mentors, County Attorney Delia Garza, who was also our first Latina elected city councilwoman and our first Latina mayor pro tem, she had come to me before we had district representation, right? We still had an at-large system here in Austin. And this wasn't too long ago. People always think it was a million years ago, but it was like I am only the second council member to come out of district voting in my spot. And so Delia came to me at one point and was like, hey, come and help me get district representation on the ballot. And I was like, hell no. And she said, why? I thought you would want this. Don't you want your district represented by a person from the district? And I was like, yeah, I absolutely want that. But we've done this dance 6 or 7 times before, and it fails every single time. Like West Austin and Central Austin are not going to let us have this. They have too much of a vested interest in controlling the entire dais. I was like, we're not going to get this. She said, well, if you don't believe that it can pass, at least come and help me. And like I tell this story all the time, like I have never failed in life listening to what a strong Latina has asked me to do. And so I jumped into it. It passes. Delia was like, hey, I think I might run for a spot. Now this is a very already accomplished person. She was one of our first Latina firefighters. Also, she used to work for the Attorney General's office, prosecuting deadbeat dads. Like just a phenomenal champion, right? And if you're not seeing it, there's a running theme in all these women that I'm around. And so I was like, oh, cool, whatever. And I've always believed you elect good people and then hold them accountable. And then my dear friend Pio Renteria came to me and he said, Jose, let's go grab a beer. We went and had a beer. He said, I think you should run for this spot. And I was like, hell no. And he was like, why not? You'll get to represent East Austin. I said, Beal, I love you to death, man, but there's a couple of things that would preclude me from doing that. I said, people in East Austin and South Austin have never really had any power when it comes to city council. I was like, so there's going to be an assumption that you're going to jump in there and you're going to flip a switch and all the social ills in East Austin and South Austin are going to dissipate, that the sun's going to come out and we're going to have, equity across the land. And that's not the case. You're still one vote, and you're still one vote pushing against 100 and almost 50 years of Austin tradition, which is to not allow that equity and not allow all those resources and not allow that prosperity. So unless you're ready to go on a 6 to 12 month educational campaign about what you can and cannot accomplish as a council member, I said, your wins are going to be non-existent and your losses are going to land 10 times harder than they should. Yeah. And he said, and I said, he goes, what's the second thing? I said, well, the second thing is, man, is that my family, my mother, they built up my name in East Austin. You know what I mean? Like we are known in East Austin because of my family, I said, and it would be a disservice to them and to the voters if I wasn't 110% in this, and I'm not there. And I just remember him saying, well, cool, if you don't do it, I'm going to do it. I was like, more power to you, Pio. And he ran off and he won, and then he ran again and he won. And then just starting to witness the not only the changes in East Austin, but the changes in Austin period, where the folks were fighting this battle that I don't think needed to be there. And it was something that I had worked very hard against in East Austin, which is the old and the new, the old and the new. And this is constant, like, I'm from here, you're not from here, you don't get a say. Or I have enough money, and even though you've been here forever, I don't give a crap, and we're gonna move how we want to move. And so trying to just bridge that divide in East Austin, and then seeing, gentrification coming in heavy, and people being priced out, and just the number of issues that were piling up. And then in the District 3 race, and this was before I decided, I saw folks that wanted to be politicians but didn't want to be advocates. And in Austin, Texas, you can cast a stone and hit a politician, man. They're on every corner. But a true advocate, somebody that wants to be, that can balance idealism and pragmatism in equal measure, and wants to be of the people and in the community 24/7 and actually fight for what's good. Again, being able to balance that idealism where you say, I have to take a loss here in order to move the ball a little bit further. But also knowing that, okay, well, if that ball moves too far, too fast for some of these folks, they freak the hell out. So let's figure out a way to just keep this thing moving on a constant trajectory, on a continuum, perpetual motion. So anyways, I saw some folks that wanted to get into the race that I felt uncomfortable with in the race, and that wanted to be politicians. And I don't like politicians. I'm an advocate, and I'm an elected official, and a politician to me is a person that'll sell you anything to get where they're going. And I'm not aspiring to another office. I wanted to come and serve my city, and this is my hometown, and it was important to me to bring that lived experience to the dais.
I love that. I love what you just said. Very rarely do you hear someone in politics say, this is what I want to serve. This is what I want to do. I don't want to go beyond this. This is where I want to
go. Man, whatever the good Lord has in store for me is unbeknownst to me at this point. But I will say is that, I wanted to come to the city of Austin owns me for 4 to 8 years, and that's what I want to do. After that, and this is a shout out to HEB, if they want to pay me 150 G's to be HE buddy, I'm right there, man. I have mascot experience.
You do?
I do. I've been a mascot before I was at the city. I had done a video when we were doing a COVID video, and I was the East Side Panther from East Side Memorial, or East Side Early College High School. And we masked up. I was out there with the legends, man, Bevo and a couple of other. I don't know if the Tornadoes were there, just a couple of other mascots, but we were all masked up and imploring people to get masked up. And then when I was at AISD, any chance I got to be a mascot, I would jump into a mascot outfit. I was a Panther again when they were going to open East Side Memorial. It was the Panther looking for his home, so he went to each one of the newly redeveloped campuses and until he found his East Side home. And that video's out there. If somebody's going to Google it and find it, it's there. But just a lot of fun, man. I enjoy myself. I try not to take myself too seriously, but I do have mascot experience. HEB, telling you if y'all need that. HE buddy, let me know.
HEB, I also have mascot experience.
Perfect.
Yeah, I worked at a grocery store dressed as Mr. Peanut and Tony the Tiger.
Man, Tony the Tiger.
Yeah.
So mine, when I was 15, so the job that I had when I was 11 was under the table, of course, right? There were still child labor laws in those days, or they were child labor laws. But when I got an official job when I was 14 or 15, I actually worked over here at Barton Creek Mall. I worked at Chick-fil-A. And when they rolled out that whole Eat More Chicken campaign, somebody got to come as the cow and they would not let me do it. And I remember it being one of the most frustrating experiences of my life, not being able to be the cow of the Eat More Chicken thing.
I like future career mascot.
Man, I'm telling you, man. Yeah. So one day we were talking about this and just banding this idea as a joke, but somebody was like, the Chicago Bull gets paid $350,000 a year. And I was like, you get $350,000 a year to bounce around and just mess with people all day?
Yeah.
Done.
It's not even that many games a year.
Not even that many games a year, man.
Well, they probably have to go to community.
Now, Rowdy for the Dallas Cowboys, done, man. Also, Jerry, if you're listening, done.
All right. We're going to work on this. So you've talked a little bit about this. You've described your work as grounded in affordability, accessibility, and action. I can already envision what it looks like day to day, but I'd love to hear you tell the listeners and tell me more about how that works. What does that really look like for representation? As
far as standing on those pillars?
Yeah.
So affordability to me is a number of different things, right? We're talking about housing. We are talking about ensuring that those levers and the mechanisms downtown work for the folks that need them most. The one thing that I can say, and this is no shade to anybody else, but the feeling that the understanding of what City Hall was and is slowly transitioning out of is that this is a City Hall to benefit the affluent. This is a City Hall to benefit the haves. And I want to just, kind of wipe some of that out of there and ensure that City Hall is working for everybody and just find small ways that it, while I had a conversation with the mayor when we were running for office, and I hope he doesn't mind me telling this story, but I'll be in trouble whenever this comes out, and he can tell me himself. He's a dear friend of mine, by the way. He gave me a community service award when I was 16 or 17 years old, when he was mayor the first time. So come full circle with him, man. But we were both on the campaign trail. We sit down and have a cup of coffee. We're old friends. My mom was actually one of the only holdovers from the Barrientos administration, Senator Barrientos administration, to the Watson administration when he became senator. So he and I we're old friends, man. We're old friends. But we were on the campaign trail, and he said, Jose, what's what are we talking about? Our first 100 days up there on the dais, our first 6 months, first 18 months. What are we talking about up there? And I said, trying to match this question with some level of humility. And I said, well, Senator, I have a race to win. I'm not really thinking about what I would be doing just yet. He said, Jose, I've been in professional politics for 30 years. We're going to be on that dais together. So what are we talking about? And I remembered, I was like, maybe he does know what he's talking about. Maybe I am going to be on that dais. No, but I remember him saying that. Again, I have this photo from that day. I'm going to get it framed for him along with the certificate that he gave me, and just to remind him, you invested in me a long while ago. But I was telling him, I said, as generic as it sounds, if we're not talking about affordability, I don't know what the hell we're talking about, because we make these investments in big and beautiful things in Austin. I was like, but people are chronically being pushed out of here. People are chronically not being able to afford to stay here. A lot of our workers are driving into the city, so what are we doing? What are we going to be doing for them? Or who are we building all these things for? If they can't take part in them, if they can't enjoy the Austin of now. And he said, I love that. I said, so if we're not talking about housing, if we're not talking about building more and more affordable housing, and working on building even more deeply affordable housing, because as more people move into Austin with those higher stacks of cash, man, it's pushing that MFI up, right? So anytime we're talking about 80% MFI, that number will be switching. That number continues to switch. So while Austin is getting richer, some people are getting a lot poorer. But he said, He said, I love that. He goes, and we're going to do all those things. He said, you and I are going to do all those things. He was like, but how about we also put money back in people's pockets? He was like, how about we find a way to have some great jobs for the people that are here in Austin, Texas? Let's invest in our workforce. And out of that came what is known as the Infrastructure Academy. And the mayor, we were on the campaign trail. He said, I got this idea. He said, we're going to have these major capital projects that are coming into Austin. Whether we're talking about 35, whether we're talking about Samsung, whatever we're talking about, we have a number of capital projects that will be coming in that are going to be here for 10, 20, 30 years that we're going to be building. How do we get our people here in Austin trained up for those jobs so they are making $60,000, $70,000, $80,000 a year, and we're not just flying in a bunch of folks from out of town? And I was like, I love that. How do we do that? And he was like, well, I want to start the Infrastructure Academy. And again, he dropped this dime on me. We're like probably about 8 months away from election day, and I'm like, okay, that sounds great, man. Yeah, that'll happen. I'm sure it'll happen. We'll get there within the next 7 or 8 years. And so he says, would you want to work on that with me? And again, I'm not an elected official at this point. I am an East Side activist having a cup of coffee with a guy that is a senator who his mom used to work for. And he says, he was like, I said, I would love to work on that. I would love to work on that. And I think that's the exact approach we need to couple with what I'm talking about. And he said, okay. We get to City Hall, and literally within the first 3 months, he comes to me. He's like, hey, remember we were talking about that Infrastructure Academy? This man doesn't forget anything. So don't ever drop something on the mayor that you don't want him to put into that steel trap of a brain that he has, because he will lock it away and remind you. And he said, I said, absolutely, I remember the Infrastructure Academy. He said, I'm going to reach out to your office. We're going to be working on it. I want you to be part of this subquorum with me. We're going to have all of these industry leaders come out, workforce leaders, union leaders come out and work with us on this. And I said, okay, sure, that'll be done. We'll find the money for that. Sure. A couple of months later, I'm sitting in the mayor's executive conference room, and all these folks are around the table talking about how we're going to lift this thing up off the ground. And he was like, it's coming to the dais in a couple of weeks. And I was like, yeah, I didn't realize we were doing this
fast.
So he moves, man.
Yeah.
He moves at it's something that I've studied about him, something that I really appreciate about him. Do not give the mayor an idea. Do not give him an idea unless you want it to come to fruition. He will figure out a way. And that's one thing that really resonates with me, because when I talked to my mom about running for office, I said, Mom, how did you do this? How did you raise 4 kids in Austin making $25,000 a year by yourself? And she was like, well, you know this. She said, you probably just never articulated to yourself. When you have to, you find a way.
Yeah.
When you have to, you find a way. And that's really the approach that I take to City Hall, man, is when I sit down in front of folks that tell me we can't do something, I'm like, okay, great. Let's disabuse ourselves of that idea for right now, that we can't do it. If we had to, how would we get from A to B? And sometimes, not all the times, we have some amazing folks that work for the city. But sometimes some of these folks in these departments, you realize that has never been pressed on them. That idea of we have to do this. How do we do this? How do we get from A to B? And that's, like I said, that's the approach that I take. And this Infrastructure Academy, the meeting happens. When we actually go and put it before the dais, and the mayor comes up, but the day we're voting on it, and he said after this meeting, he said, I don't want to tempt fate, but I want to talk to you. He goes, remember the other thing that I told you about, that we need a place for this Infrastructure Academy? I said, yeah, where the hell are we going to get those dollars? And he was like, after this meeting, he's like, again, don't want to tempt fate. Let's make sure this passes. He said, and we'll have a conversation. Literally, we take the vote. He comes over. He says, hey, so we just got ACC on board. They're going to build us the actual building, the actual Infrastructure Academy. And he was like, I need you with me next Friday when we announce it at ACC. And I was like, holy crap. And I'm like, this idea is you just poured water into it and it's starting to grow out of the ground. And just watching his, again, just this dogged approach that he takes to policy. And it's really helped me understand better how to get things done at City Hall. When you want to do something, man, just dig the hell in and get it done. But that's, coupling those two things, that's the affordability aspect of it. The accessibility aspect of it is that I said this the other day, I said it on the diocese, I said it at this event the other day, is that I wanted to be the representation that I've always wanted, which is I wanted somebody that I could text and say, hey man, can you work on this? Absolutely. Or, I don't have to jump through 13 hoops to figure something out at City Hall. just call Velásquez. Just call Velásquez. He'll figure it out, or he'll get working on something. But he will not stop until he hits an absolute like roadblock or dead end. In which case he'll either dig under it or try to bust through it like the Kool-Aid man. So this is what the approach that I take, right? And so accessibility is like I do coffee chats one-on-one, like anybody from and I'm no shade to some of my colleagues, but some of their constituents sign up for coffee chats with me because they can't get a hold of their council member, and they'll be like, hey, well, I'm not really in your district. I was like, I don't care, I want to chat with anybody. And while I represent a district, I still represent the entire city as a whole. And so coffee chats, I do block walking when I have, when we haven't been running for office. And I remember I went to this lady's house, and we were, it was early in the morning, because I get up, like I said, I get up at 4. So just trying to remember that most human beings don't get up on Saturdays till about 9 or 10, right? Nobody wants to be, especially a city council member, knocking at their door at 8 a.m. So knocked on her door, and she was like, she's talking, she's yelling at somebody behind her. She comes up, she's doing a couple of things, and I said, hi, and I guess all she heard was Councilmember Velásquez, and she said, oh, that's great. She goes, oh, they're out in the neighborhood? I said, yeah. I said, we're out in the neighborhood. I said, we just wanted to drop by, say if they need anything from the office, give us a holler. And she was like, oh, is he running for re-election? I said, no, man. And then she's like, cut it. I can't finish that. I'm the actual person. I am the Councilmember Velásquez. And so she says, well, you know what? Tell him thank you so much for doing this, for coming out to the community. We never see politicians unless they're running for office. And I was like, no, ma'am. Like I'm not running right now. I just wanted to come out to the community. She was like, oh, are you going to be running too? I said, no, ma'am. I'm actually José Velásquez. And she was like, oh my God. I remember she was like, Bill, come here. And Bill comes up from the back, and Bill is very obviously mixing pancake batter. And he's like, hi, how are you? She was like, this is Councilmember Velásquez. She's like, oh, from his office. And I was like, is this a comedy show? No, I'm the actual guy. But that type of impact, right? Yeah, because that spreads like wildfire. Somebody will say, you know what? Oh, you've never met your council member? Mine was just walking the block the other day, and we're trying to make pancakes, and he shows up at our house. I do call time. I pick up the phone. The District 3 constituent liaison, Benny Romero, gets some very, very tough phone calls throughout the week, if you can imagine.
Yeah.
I tell Benny to give me like the top 3 or 4 or 5, whatever I have time for. And every other week, I call back those cases myself, personally. Hey, this is José Velásquez. Heard we were working on X, Y, and Z. Either we got it done, we didn't get it done, or like we have exhausted everything. There's nothing else that we can do. A lot of times those folks don't realize that it's me calling either. So it'll be like, hey, this Councilman Velásquez, I have been calling y'all's office, blah, blah, blah. I was like, yeah, no, that's why I'm calling you back. He's like, I need to hear from the councilman. Like, this is the council member. Yell at me. Like one of the funnier times that this happened, somebody had called our office, and people chronically get me and Councilmember Vela mixed up. He is José Chito Vela. I am José Velásquez. But the JV, José, the V, the G, the JV, the VLA, and then I guess I'll give him this, the handsomeness. I don't know what it is that they chronically get mixed up. One day this lady was yelling at me for like 20 minutes on the telephone. I kept trying to tell her, like, ma'am, I think you have the wrong office. And she was like, no, in Runberg, you don't even know your areas. And I was like, ma'am. And then so finally, like, she stops. I think she's like catching her breath. And I was like, ma'am, I'm Councilmember José Velásquez. I was like, I represent District 3. I think you're calling for Chito Vela. He's right next door, but he represents District 4. And she was like, and you talked to me for 20 minutes? I said, ma'am, I just wanted you to make sure I got your issue address. I said, but I'm going to tell you what. She was like, can you transfer me over there? I was like, I'm going to do you one better. I'm going to walk over there, and I'm going to tell him the 20-minute conversation we just had and make sure he calls you back. She was so embarrassed. But like those being able, to touch people on a personal level, that is my brand. Like I want folks to say, like, if I can't get a hold of anybody else, I can figure out a way to get a hold of Velásquez. I can figure out a way to get in front of him or get in front of his staff, and just I wanted to change what active representation meant in this city. I had a couple of colleagues when I first got there that told me, you're doing a little too much. Call time, block walking. I also do we have a community team, which is, I believe that community is built through service. So at least once a quarter or once every couple of months, we go out, we ask for folks from the community to come and volunteer with us on a service project in the district to say, like, y'all, if you want to work on this, let's go work on this. But let's work on this. The phone calls, thank you. The emails, thank you. But come and help me affect some change. Come and help me feed some folks. Come and help me distribute some clothing. Come and help me fold some clothing. You know, like, come and help, because that's the only way we're going to build community, and the only way we're going to get through some of the very daunting and trying times we're in is with each other.
I love, what an answer. Like, truly, I think you really summarized what you do for your job in such a great way, and how you pay service to your district, and how you really do serve over self. I think I want to rewind for a second, because I think our listeners really, most probably don't know. There's 10 districts. They have no idea what District 3 is. I think we should tell people a little bit more about some of the major roadways. I know you've got 4 parks, 4 libraries. I don't know how many schools, because unfortunately AISD is shutting some schools down. But you've got a pretty good district. Can you tell us a little bit about kind of the boundaries and some of maybe the landmarks in that area?
I always love telling people like this. Like, let's say we're starting at 7th and 35, right? 7th and 35, there's a Gabriela's right there.
Yeah.
So Gabriela's is on the other side. I have the south side of that. So coming straight down 7th Street, we're going to go down 7th Street. We're going to take a left at Weberville, cut up Weberville to Pedernales, Pedernales up into Oak Springs over Airport. Once it gets past Springdale, it cuts up one more street almost to Ledesma all the way to 183. A little nugget that is cut out of there past 183. Then it comes back up around 290, splitting down 290 all the way to 35.
Yeah.
35 up to Stasny. I think right there. Yeah, I think it cuts right up to Stasny. A little bit past that, there's a street called Little Texas Lane. Little Texas Lane, like, it's literally the next street after Stasny. It cuts back down, goes straight back down Stasny to Emerald Forest, and a little bit beyond Emerald Forest, and then it comes all the way over down past almost to, let's see, I think it starts back up around Old Torf. It extends almost all the way to Lamar, right before the train tracks, or right after, and that's the part that always gets me. Then when it comes over the train tracks, I scoop up a huge chunk of around the South 5th, South 1st, those areas, and then I split West Mary with Councilmember Kadri. West Mary, so we're coming down West Mary. To Congress all the way back up to Old Torf, Old Torf all the way back to 35 down to back to 7th Street and 35.
What an adventure.
Man, I love it. And it is 2 huge chunks of Austin. I believe about 91,000 people. And you know, like, very economically diverse. I mean, to me, like I said, there's no greater blessing than being able to represent my hometown from my home district.
I think one of the biggest questions I have, and I think our listeners would have the same, which is there's so much noise around city council. You know, you hear the good, the bad, you hear it all. And I mean, you're hearing it directly from people, you're seeing it in the news. There's constant debate about budgets, taxes. We've got a proposition right now and priorities. Some of the criticism I think is valid. I think there's sometimes disorganization, but it's getting better. I think that the council, this current iteration of council, is probably better than some of the past ones I've seen.
I mean, I'll take that, man.
Yeah,
I'll take that every day of the week.
I think you should take that.
You know, I actually said that earlier. I was like, you know, not to throw any shade at former councils, but we are moving on housing and our unhoused.
Yeah, I agree. So some of it, I think, when people react, they react because they're seeing something in reality that truly is affecting them. And sometimes it's just like, I swear there's someone that whispers it to one person, who whispers it to the other, and you hear the same constant theme over and over again, whether it's true or not. You have to fight against misinformation, I'm sure, as a council member. So when the volume's turned up across the city, how do you personally stay grounded and decide what's most important to act on? Because you're having to, you heard from other districts, you heard from other district constituents, you're hearing from everything. How do you do that effectively at the council level?
So if it doesn't fall within one of our 3 pillars, man, if it's not making me more accessible, if it's not making Austin more affordable, if accessibility, if we're not talking about folks having access to other things, having access to resources. But staying focused is I feel that I was sent here to be able, or sent to City Hall to be able to, again, balance that idealism and pragmatism. And while there is a lot of misinformation that can happen, the one thing that I always try to do is meet people where they're at. Like, okay, that's the information you have. Can we have a conversation about that? Like, to me, communication is everything, and it's the only thing that outside of love that is going to win out, and the only thing that's going to help us through. And I don't ever begrudge anybody for their understanding of who we are as city council members, but let me fail you. Don't give me a chance that once I have owned the problem, give me a chance to fail you, and then on the other side of that, you can call me whatever you want, but give me a chance to fail you. And if you're judging me by prior city councils, that's understandable too, because you know what, I wasn't there, man. I can't fix what they did. I can only do what I can do now. But give me that chance to fail. That is the only request that I have of folks when I chat with them. And when folks call, like, there are some of these folks that I tell you that I call back. I've made some of the best friends out of those conversations. There's this gentleman, and I'll leave his name out of this because I don't want his social media getting blown up after this. But somebody that is a very, very, very conservative person that I am very much not, called the office, or would blow us up on social media, call me all kinds of names. I mean, essentially just the Fox News playbook. He had all of the talking points lined up, and I was a libtard, and I was this, and I was that, and I'm ruining the city, and blah, blah, blah. I don't care. And so one day I was, I do the one-on-one coffee chats because I also think that it's very hard to say those things to somebody when you're right in front of them. The social media has given us a very comfortable space to be able to be ugly, and it allows ugly to fester.
Well, because you don't take accountability.
You don't have to be accountable.
Not at all.
You don't have to be accountable for your actions. And like my brother used to tell me, is like, don't let your mouth write a check your butt can't cash. And so this gentleman, I had reached out to him. I said, hey man, I reached out to him on my personal account, not my city account. And I said, hey man, would you like to sit down and have a cup of coffee, and you and I can chat face to face about this? And he was like, I'm not sitting down with some libtard, blah, 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 went off on a rant again. Well, so it turns out that I was at this, there is this coffee shop / brewery / just place where people go in the district. And I was having coffee with some colleagues. We're meeting about something, and then it was getting to be about 4 or 5 o'clock, and I was like, oh, well, they were taking off. I'm gonna go have me a pint now that my day's done. I was walking over, I look, and the gentleman's at the bar, and I was like, yeah, I'm gonna do this. So I said, I put my laptop down right next to him. He hasn't started paying attention to me yet. I put my laptop down. I order 2 pints, and then I say, hey, so and so. I said, and he looks up, startled as all get out, like, holy this guy's right in front of me. And I said, how are you, man? I said, you're so and so, right? And I stuck out my hand to shake it, and he shook my hand, and I said, hey, keep an eye on my laptop real quick, right? So one, I'm already giving him an order of something to do, right? He can reject that, but like, he's so startled, he's not knowing what he's about to do. So he says, oh yeah. I said, when I come back, we're gonna have that pint, right? And he was like, yeah, sit down. Must have cut it up for like 3 hours, man. Cut it up for 3 hours. We disagree on just about everything, but we have communication. I talked to this person. I still see this person. He told me one time, he said, I love telling that story, man. I love telling people how I jumped up and down on you. I love telling people how, like, I was like, oh, well, if I see you, blah, blah, blah. He said, and now I tell people, he's like, that is the only Democrat I would ever vote for in my entire life. And I'm like, man, again, we don't agree on anything, but also you telling me your positions help me sharpen why I believe what I believe. I mean, and the communication keeps us furthering that ball, man. It keeps us moving it along so that we're not just caught in these silos where we're arguing against each other or arguing against an understanding of what we have about each other, as opposed to the actual fact. Like, if we can sit down and cut it up over beers, even if we don't agree on 99% of things, if we agree on what is the 1% we can agree on. And I say that in jest, but we have so much more in common than we have differences, and people are just refusing to get there, refusing to have that conversation, because it's easier to have the hot take. It's easier to yell something on social media and make somebody look silly, as opposed to actually having a conversation or like getting in front of somebody and really owning that space, owning your mouth.
Yeah. Well, I mean, most politicians refuse to engage.
Oh man, I love it.
So the fact that you were willing to do that is a gold star for you.
I had a conversation with the mayor the other day, man, because he I think we're cut from the same cloth when it concerns this. When the temperature goes up, man, that's where I shine, man. I love being able to take when people are, whatever they're upset about, and being able to have a conversation with them, at least to where they've like, oh, okay, I see what you're saying. I may not agree with you, but I see what you're saying. Because like, to me, it's like walking in the lines, and that's part of the job, man. Like people are going to be upset with you, but also they're upset with you because the majority of the time, like, while they may not like every decision you make, you haven't talked to them enough. You haven't told them enough. They haven't been active participants in whatever you're trying to create. And once you know that, like, sometimes people are operating out of fear. Sometimes folks are upset because they haven't been part of the process. Sometimes there are folks that just want to be mean to you, right? Which is totally fine too. But like, those people usually get sifted out anyway, right? Like, they aren't usually there all the time. We do have some frequent flyers at City Hall, but like, for the most part, if you sit down or are agreeable to sit down and have a conversation, like, you can dispel almost all of that.
Yeah. I think what you told me, I think, tells me a lot about what you're trying to do is representation for your district. But I mean, if I had to ask you so far, since you've been elected, what your proudest win and what your toughest day has been so far, what does that look like for you?
Proudest win? Just about anything we move on housing, man. Just about anything we move on housing. When we're able to make it so that housing gets a little bit more affordable, and or less expensive by Austin standards, right? Affordable can be tough, but my biggest win is ensuring that I am bringing City Hall to the community. So it's a daily win. So I tell folks, this isn't a job for me, man. Like, I don't even feel like I'm working, because this is just, I thoroughly enjoy what I do on the good and bad days, man. And the bad days aren't never as bad as we think that they are, and the good days are never as great as they actually were. But being able to just find that balance where you're not getting too high and too low on things, the win for me, man, is the service. Every day it's the service, and being able to, like, when folks are like, oh, well, I can contact you. Like, man, contact me directly. I give out my cell phone number. Like, I mean, you think that I'm just like, we're at a speed dating place because I give out my number so much. And
putting it on the screen right now.
But I just always want folks to know that, like I had a friend tell me the other day, how are you everywhere? How are you everywhere? And I was like, that's what I want. And I had a friend say, you know what? I'm exhausted just looking at your social media. Like, I get exhausted just seeing how many things you do in a day. And it's like, I don't ever run thin on that. Like, I love that. I absolutely love that. Now, there are times when I have to take a day or a couple of days, and I'm bad at taking vacations and traveling, but this is my dream job. This is absolutely what I wanted to do. It's just to serve. And so, greatest win is every day, man, being able to bring government to people and making sure that they feel that this is theirs. This is I even tell my team, like, we run this office together. Like there's no hierarchy here. I'm just the guy that ran for office, and my name's on the door. That's it. That's the only difference. Everybody has the same say, and that's what I want people to remember, that my name's on the door, but that's your office. What do you need? What is lacking right now? I think the hard times for me is that government doesn't always move as fast as I want it to, and it definitely doesn't move as fast as the people want it to.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I love this. We're going to come back in a second. Councilmember Velásquez's journey is far from traditional, from community organizing to launching policy that touches thousands. If you're enjoying this episode, make sure to follow us on Austin Eras and share it with a friend, and RSVP to our next happy hours and events at austineras.com.
In every episode of Austin Eras, we uncover the city's history, vibrant present, and bold future. Just like Austin, your financial journey is a story worth crafting. At Collective Advisors, led by Adam Flagg, Managing Partner, Senior Wealth Advisor, and Certified Financial Planner Professional, your story is in skilled hands. From investments to retirement planning, Adam and his team bring together a collective of dependable professionals to help you build, maintain, and enjoy financial security. Start your financial legacy today at collectiveadvisors.com or call 512-467-1923. Investment advisory services offered through CWM LLC, an SEC-registered investment advisor.
And we're back with Councilmember José Velásquez. Let's lighten it up and explore a little bit about what makes Austin feel like home for you.
Alrighty.
Right before we jumped in this podcast, we were talking about the Dallas Cowboys.
Absolutely, man. America's team.
America's team. So they've had some good times. They've had some bad times. When you were younger and I was younger, the Cowboys were super team.
Yeah. 1996, man.
Yeah, there were some great teams along the way. You've been a fan since how long?
Since before I was born. My mom's been a Dallas Cowboys fan, and my older brother was a Dallas Cowboys fan, and they both raised me. So I'm a born and bred Dallas Cowboys fan.
So I don't know if we want to talk too much about the season, but it's because I don't know when this will come out. But they've been doing okay. They've been doing pretty good.
Man, I could not be more proud to be at 2-2-1 right now. 2-2-1, folks. 2-2-1. But whenever. Like Dallas Cowboys fans, I know why people hate us, man. It can be very obnoxious because, like, I know folks are probably going to hear this, like, how the hell is he that happy being at 2-2-1, man? Like, I always enjoy the journey. I always enjoy the journey with the Cowboys.
Well, they lose Parsons, but they have George Pickens doing man. Great things.
And next year, I mean, if we don't go this year to the homeland, if we don't make it back to the Super Bowl. Next year we have some awesome picks coming up in the draft, so we're excited about it.
All right, so I think Dallas Cowboys fandom is almost burned into you in a
Absolutely,
sense.
Man. It's literally burned into you.
How did it get burned into you?
So, yeah, I love telling this story. So, like, I, like a lot of Mexicanos, Chicanos, I love menudo. Love menudo. So, my dad, who was, never, ever going to win Father of the Year award, was supposed to be watching me one day when I was a kid. And I was wearing this acrylic sweater, and for folks that don't know, acrylic is probably the cheapest thing you can make a sweater out of, next to a potato sack. And so I'm wearing this acrylic sweater. My dad's supposed to be watching me. Back in the day, they used to serve menudo or take home menudo in these huge, like almost just styrofoam cups with like a plastic lid on the top. Well, my dad had taken it off because it was burning. The lid was melting onto the cup. And Jose walks in at 3 years old and grabs the menudo and pours it down on himself. Scalding hot menudo. I get third-degree burns all over my chest, but the Dallas Cowboys acrylic sweater that I was wearing literally gets burned into my skin. And I remember my mom telling me that the doctor said that there were some of the fibers that they couldn't remove. So the Dallas Cowboys are literally burned into me.
That's incredible. So you have no other choice.
No other choice. Even if I can't even imagine being a fan of any other team, man. I had a friend that one time he was telling me, "What was your backup team?" And I was like, my backup team is the Dallas Cowboys. Like, that's it. That's all I got, man. And like for folks that are born and raised in Austin, like it used to be for me. Saturdays were for the Longhorns, Sundays are for the Cowboys, but like there was a time when they were both not very great.
Yeah.
And I couldn't handle the emotional trauma of that anymore, man. The emotional turmoil of both my teams losing in a weekend and me going to work on Monday, because I'm highly invested in my teams, if you can't tell. And so I had to make a choice, man, a while back. And it's not that I am not a Longhorns fan or wish them any ill will. It's just I don't have the emotional bandwidth, man, for two teams. So my Cowboys, man, that's why I'm just ride or die with them. I don't watch basketball. I don't watch baseball. I wait the 9 months not watching any sports until the Dallas Cowboys come back on TV.
Love it. So this is the Good Hang segment. So we're learning a little bit more about you personally. What's a weird or quirky Austrian tradition that you hope never fades?
Weird or quirky Austin tradition, the bats, man. The bats. I love that folks go and check out the bats. The what is it? The Mexican. God, I can't remember the name of it. I'm probably gonna get blasted for that. But like the fact that we have folks that
the free-tail bats.
The free-tail bats.
Yeah.
Okay. The fact that folks go out and watch bats from underneath our bridge.
I did it last year.
Story.
Yeah,
it is. I mean, it's like fun. It's actually
thing.
A lot of fun. Like it is actually a lot of fun.
It's crazy that they all just congregated there. What's for you? Music is such a big deal to Austin. What's an album or artist that really reminds you of Austin?
An album or artist that really reminds me of Austin, man. Well, so. A number of different folks, man, but
throw them out there, name check.
Well, so like Lil J from the O2, give him a shout out right now. He's a born and raised East Austinite, and one of the reasons that he resonates with me so much is that he reminds me of my little brother, and he's coming up right now. So I give him a shout out, but like. The number one, man, I mean, is Stevie Ray Vaughan. Stevie Ray Vaughan. My brother introduced me to Stevie Ray Vaughan. I have been a Stevie Ray Vaughan fan since since I could remember, and I knew more about Stevie Ray Vaughan than I knew about some of my relatives when I was growing up. So my brother was a diehard Stevie Ray Vaughan fan and guitar fan. So Stevie Ray Vaughan.
What's the most unforgettable live music experience you've ever had here?
Ozfest. Oh, wait, I'm sorry. Here. So when, what is his name? Oh my God, the cyclist, the Tour de France. Lance Armstrong won one of his Tour de France, They had a huge concert in front of the state capitol.
Okay.
They had shut down Congress, and they had Steve Miller Band.
Yeah.
And so I love Steve Miller Band. Again, me and my brother, we have an 8-year disparity. So I got like all of like 80s, 70s, 80s rock. But Steve Miller Band was one of them. And I remember hearing that he was coming. And I got my way to the front. And I remember like we jumped over some barriers we shouldn't have jumped over, and being there in the front row, listening to Steve Miller Band is probably one of my greatest memories of Austin music.
So that's an Austin experience, but it sounds like you were about to tell me about Ozfest.
Oh, Ozfest in San Antonio, man. So again, my musical taste just span the entire, almost any genre, right? Like I just love music. I wake up with it. I was talking to my team the other day about like, I wake up with a song in my head almost every day, like, and that'll usually be my soundtrack for the day. And so like whatever song that is, but Ozfest, man, I went to Ozfest when there was like all the new metal guys were there, and it was like Korn and Kid Rock and System of a Down, Marilyn Manson, and so to me these were the guys from my heyday, man. Yeah. Like it was a phenomenal concert, and then of course Ozzy.
Yeah.
So
yeah, rest in peace.
Rest in peace, man.
Amazing. He put on one last great concert for, and then passed away like 2 weeks later or something. What's the most Austin thing you've ever witnessed?
The most Austin thing I've ever
What defines
witnessed?
Austin in your head? What makes you really feel like at home in Austin?
Community, man. Like Austin takes care of itself, and the most Austin thing. I don't know about the most Austin thing. I was thinking about that on my way over here, but like the most Austin thing, I think it really is just. I do know. I'm sorry. When the city was going through COVID, and the city was shut down, one of my dear friends and heroes, Constable George Morales, him and one of my other dear friends, County Judge Andy Brown, and another one of my dear friends, and I'm not just name drop, they are my actual friends. Yeah. In fact, I was with Andy Brown earlier today, and I was talking about how we used to sit in his living room and talk about how we were going to help the world and save the world, man. But the three of them got together and said, we're not going to wait. We are going to be distributing PPE. We're going to be distributing this shot. We are going to proactively get together. There were so many volunteers there that day, and I was so proud of my hometown because it was for folks that wouldn't have normally had access to these shots, wouldn't have normally had access to PPE, wouldn't have had access to the number of resources that were provided there that day. And that is probably the most Austin experience, is the way Austin takes care of itself.
I love that. Great answer. If you could have dinner with any Austinite, living or dead, who would it be and why?
Any Austinite, living or dead. I would love to have, and this is selfishly, I would love to have dinner with my great uncle Roy. I never got to meet him, and he was considered the mayor of East Austin when he was growing up. I believe he had an 8th grade education, but helped out and was a Hispanic issues advisor for President Truman and President LBJ. And used to sell back in the day. Latinos and African Americans had to pay a tax to vote, and he would hold what are called poll tax dances to help people raise the funds to be able to go and vote. I would love to be able to chat with him right now and have that conversation with him and let him know that we're finally holding some of the strings.
That's amazing. So you never got to meet him. He passed away, but you heard about him from your family.
He's one of my inspirations. His photos up in my office. And anytime I'm out and around some of the older generation, I never fail to hear a story about him.
I want to move to the future. I want to talk about what's next for Austin. What's something that most Austinites aren't thinking about right now, but you believe will become a major issue or priority for the city council in the coming years?
It's going to continue to be affordability for here on out, and I would caution anybody running for office that it isn't making that their top priority.
So I've got maybe a bigger question about Austin affordability, because I think you don't get those words put together very often anymore, unfortunately. And more and more residents are being pushed outside the city limits. More of them are, looking at trying to find an Austin experience without the Austin price tag. So I think my question really is that this belief of raising taxes today will prevent greater expenses down the road. We've got this bill that's it's already going to be voted on by the time this airs. But we're talking about a decent tax increase. So I don't think sometimes that helps people that are already in crisis. So when you look at the data for the city, District 3 and 4 face some of the toughest income realities of any of the districts.
Absolutely.
In fact, it's sometimes haves and have-nots in some ways you look at this.
The majority of the Eastern Crescent.
Yeah, so how do you advocate effectively for your constituents while also collaborating with other council members that may be coming at it from an entirely different perspective?
What I said when we were putting together our budget this year, and I'm assuming we're talking about the TRE, right?
Yeah.
The tax rate election. So what I said, and this still holds true, and I will say it till I'm blue in the face, we're redefining what essential means in Austin. For a long time, essential just meant police, it just meant EMS, it just meant firefighters, and it just meant keeping the lights on. That was when City Hall, when the power rested with West and Central Austin. There are a number of social safety nets that will go away if this doesn't pass, and people will be a lot. And I'm not here to fearmonger. It's just a reality. And in a year or two's time, we will be running short on funds to be able to afford some of the things that we offer now, like mental health dollars, like money that goes to our food banks, like our parent support specialists, like CVI, which is community violence interrupters it has been proven that they help reduce murders in this city. But these are not things that people consider essential, right? Because they don't affect everybody, but they will affect everybody. And when we're talking about our unhoused, folks talk about our unhoused, in the abstract. We're talking about human beings here. We're talking about folks that need a place to stay, that need some compassion, and that we need to recognize a humanity in again.
How do we do that? I get that we've got to raise taxes to do that. How do we do that, especially for District 3? If rent's going to go up, if property tax is going to go up on people that have owned homes, like say your mother or other people that are in the community, even more than they've already been there. How do we keep that affordable for those people? How do we pull that off? It is those resources on the back end of this thing that will ensure that we're not paying more for these problems down the road.
If we aren't investing in our unhoused now, we're going to be investing more in jails. We're going to be investing more in crises in our emergency rooms, and it is the idea that the only way that we can keep Austin affordable is to ensure that a tax bill doesn't go up. I don't accept that. There are a number of different ways that this is keeping Austin from being even more expensive. If we don't have anti-displacement dollars, that means that those folks that let's say work in the service industry are going to get pushed out. Now your cheeseburger is $2 more, or now your clothing is more expensive. Your construction, us putting up these highways are more expensive because we're having to pay people more because they're having to drive into town to get this done. More people are spending time on the highways to get to work. How much is that costing you in family time? How much is it costing in air pollution? And these are all things that are just continuing to drive up that bill. Now, while it may not seem, you're not going to get it in the form of a $200 tax bill. You're going to be paying for it on the back end by virtue of all these things that are falling through the cracks and the social safety net that we're trying to ensure has fewer and fewer holes that are punched into it from the federal and state government.
So how do we stop the gentrification of some of these districts where
building affordable housing, man, and building deeply affordable housing, being able to disabuse the city of the idea of these arcane and racist measures that were instituted a long time ago to ensure black and brown people couldn't buy houses in certain parts of town. We couldn't build certain types of housing. This was all instituted to ensure that power and money and sides of town stayed exactly where people felt they should. My family was here when the 1928 master plan was enacted, and Latinos and African Americans were pushed over 35 into what is now being gentrified. So it's like, we need to heal as a city, but we also need to have some tough conversations about the why. And, unfortunately, that pits people that are already being gentrified against against fighting some of these issues, because now it could force them to have to leave, and so being very cognizant of those things, trying to balance them out, and like I said, balancing the idealism and pragmatism so that we're doing the least amount of harm when we enact these type of things.
So you were elected in 2022. If possible, you potentially have 2 terms of 4 years apiece. So 2030, we'll call it 6 years, 5 years from now. If you had to kind of look back at your time, if you serve a full 2 terms, what's success, or whether you do or not, what does success look like for District 3? Where do you want it to look in 5 years? Success
to me would be the people in this city, especially in District 3, saying, that's not the way you run that office. That's not the way you work that office. Because if you're not out in the community, you're not doing that job right. If I can't get a hold of you, you're not doing that job right. If you are not the Chick-fil-A of customer service at City Hall, you're not doing that job right. You need to respond to me. I need to feel like I'm part of the process and not just collateral damage in your decision.
I love that. What do you hope to champion in the next year for your district and the overall Austin community beyond affordability? What else are kind of some pillars that you've been looking at?
Man, one thing that we're looking at is on Riverside, there is a huge need for a recreation center for our kids in that area that are like landlocked because of Old Torf and Riverside and 35 and 71. Trying to figure out how we get us a recreation center over there. But on top of that, I'm working worked with County Attorney Garza to bring, and it's not just for the districts, for the entire city, to bring what is known as a Family Justice Center, which is essentially all the wraparound services for anybody that's suffering abuse or trauma. I grew up around domestic violence, so it's a very personal issue to me. And my dear friend, mentor Delia brought this idea, and I said, like I said, man, I've never been steered wrong when I've been told to do anything or worked on anything with a strong Latina or woman. And so she brought this idea, and I jumped in 2 feet first, man.
I love it. The last question I have for you really is around your time, the way you're serving, the way you're spending your time. When you finish up, whether it's 1, 2 terms, I have the feeling, just based on our conversation today, that you're not going away anywhere. You're staying in the area, but how do you want to be remembered for your time in the city council, and how do you want to continue to be able to serve your constituency and your community? So
I had a mentor tell me one time, man, that because, I believe that you have to see to be, right? You have to see somebody in that position. The person for me, or the 2 people for me, were Senator Gonzalo Barrientos and my dear friend Paul Saldana, who went on to be a trustee for AISD. But when I met him, he was this foul-mouthed staffer for Councilman Gus Garcia, our first Latino mayor. And I remember I was in another room, and I Paul knew my family from back in the day because we both grew up in East Austin. But Paul is in this other room cussing up a storm. Sounds like one of my cousins. And I'm like, holy crap! They let people talk like that here. And I just remember him. I don't know who he was cussing at, but it was terrifying. And then he comes out, and I'm like, holy crap! That's a Latino. Like, I didn't even know I didn't know we worked here, but 2, I desperately didn't know they allowed us to talk like that here. And he comes out, and it is like night and day. And I was like, that couldn't be the same person, because he comes out and he's like, hey, how are you? He was like, you're one of the Velásquez, right? He's like, I know your family, blah, blah. And I'm like, does this guy have like a mental health issue? Like, because he was just screaming at this person in horrible foul language, and comes out and it's just night and day. But my mentor told me, make sure you're holding the door open as long as you can. Make sure you're putting on as many people as you can. People that have never experienced government, people that have never been a part of their government, people that have no interest in participating. Help them see the benefits of that. And as long as I can hold the door open, that's what I want to be known for, is that being a good mentor to the people behind me, and ensuring that I am doing justice by those that ensure that I could be here.
Love it. Councilmember Velásquez, it's a pleasure having you here to learn about
It's been an honor, brother. It's been a joy.
Your values, your stories. I think I know so much more about you, and I feel like that I hope our listeners do too, because I think you taking the time to really tell who you are and what got you here is valuable to your office. So we'll put links to office and constituent resources on our show notes. And to our listeners, I hope you listen. I hope you share. I hope you learn a little bit about Councilmember Velásquez. Subscribe, share this episode. Join us at the next Austin Eras Happy Hours. We're going to start those in January. And don't forget, we welcome guest ideas and feedback to adam@austineras.com or our great showrunner who's always behind the scenes, Mel Martin, mel@austineras.com. Thanks again. I'm Adam Flagg signing off for Austin Eras Podcast.
Austin Eras, featuring Adam Flagg, is brought to you by Collective Advisors. Collective Advisors offers investment advisory services through CWM LLC, an SEC-registered investment advisor. Guests on Austin Eras are not affiliates of CWM LLC, and opinions expressed by guests may not reflect those of CWM LLC. This show is intended for educational and entertainment purposes and is not intended to provide specific legal, tax, or other professional advice. For a comprehensive review of your personal situation, always consult with a qualified professional.